we wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about our flex pricing. So this is a new model for Sumo that we've introduced back in March, primarily with some of our earlier prospect accounts, and we are now starting to expand out into our existing customer base. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about the basics of Flex, what it is, and how it kind of relates to um, what you might have today, but also some of the key advantages and why we're thinking Flex as a kind of a key foundation going forward for our structure as a price model. So what is Flex? Well, first we need to talk a little bit about why we made the change. When we are always looking at how we can better align our value to you, the customer, in terms of what type of output or value you're getting out of Sumo Logic and the platform and the capabilities that we offer. And when we look to the market, both talking to yourselves internally with customers and also externally through even blind third-party surveys out there in the market, it was pretty clear that the overall compelling value proposition around something like a Sumo Logic platform is around insights and analytics. It's around the output of the data that you're ingesting, that you're running the queries against. You're running those processes to understand what's happening within your systems, to understand what's happening within your security framework, and what's happening within your applications. Yet when you look at the model, you look at the models out there and how, to a certain extent, Sumo and others are primarily priced for that type of offer. It's usually a proxy, and it's usually a proxy around data ingest or some sort of compute type element or users in some cases, or some type of server element. So while those work fairly well, they still are not directly linked to the value you get out of something in terms of the analytics that you're providing. So what we decided to do was think about it differently. And so when we got those results back and we look at both how data grows, again, if you have the models primarily on ingest, the reality is the analytics, which is the value proposition that most customers align to, grow at a different pace. So we take these two kind of key tenets and we were thinking about it, how do we do this differently? And so what we've introduced is what we call our flex model. And really what that means is primarily around logging. It's an introduction to a different way to align the consumption of capacity within the Sumo platform to the value that you're getting out of it. And hopefully with that tighter relationship provides a stronger ROI alignment in terms of what you're getting and what you're using. And so the key tenet to the model is, if you're familiar with Sumo as you are, your primarily consumption is based on the ingest of the log data today, and then you're allowed to run analytics. There is a storage component that's usually a kind of a base component. It's a relatively minor part of the overall value proposition, but there's some element of retention as well. The challenge with upfront ingest is we ask you to make a lot of decisions upfront before you've even seen the data. We ask you to think about if it is even affordable to bring the data in, right, within the model. We ask you to think about the type of analytics you need to run against it. And we ask you to think about how this is going to impact your business before you've even seen the data. And what the Flex model does is provides you an opportunity to decide what makes sense from an analytics perspective with a lower cost barrier up front. So with Flex model, there's no charge on the log ingest itself. The consumption of credits, which you're familiar with, is aligned to the search volume. So when you run a query, the query identifies the amount of data that needs to be scanned or searched. And that is what triggers on the credit element when we talk about Flex. So you can bring the data in, you can run a few test scenarios, you can decide what type of analytics you need for that data, whether it's dashboarding or alerting, whether it's just ad hoc queries infrequently based on more of a compliance use case. it's up to you at that point, but it provides a flexibility for you to bring data in, decide how you want to do it, and have that centralized location for data, have that centralized location for analytics for your logs, and allow you a more economical way to bring in a broader swath of data so that you can run analytics holistically against your data volume and only really consume capacity or cost associated with the actual analytics you're running with the baseline on your variable storage. So how does that work, right? How long, how do you even determine what it means in terms of search volume or search analytics? What we typically suggest is when we're talking to our customers, and we've had numerous conversations over the last several months, is this isn't a specific direct science. Like you're never going to have the exact number of terabytes searched on any particular given day forecasted out for months or years. But what we have seen over 10 years of doing business and within our platform with our customers is analytics tend to run in a profile. Analytics tend to run in a pattern with most of our customers. And the model's been designed to accommodate both high and active users with analytics and also customers that might either are starting or run more of a, call it a security compliance scenario or a low analytic profile. And then obviously everything in between. And your sales representatives would work with you on helping determine based on what you're doing today, how that translates into our model going forward, and if it makes sense, right, in that context for any type of conversion, right, down the road. So how we look at it is we come up with a profile of an estimate of search volume needed around, again, these kind of low, average, high scenarios based on what you're doing from an analytics pattern, right? Do you run dashboards? Do you run monitors? Do you have multiple users globally coming into your product, running ad hoc queries on a daily basis? Do you have an observability pattern where you're doing a lot of alerts and scheduled searches? Or do you have a compliance pattern where you're bringing in data, but you look at it periodically for compliance needs? Those types of questions as a customer, it's easier to get to those answers than trying to calculate search volume in a platform. And we do that kind of back end to come back with you and say, this is how we see it. But this has been working fairly well over the last 6 months with our prospect community and our new customers who have been already aligned or subscribed to our Flex model. And we believe it's a right path eventually to go with customers over time. So, we take these patterns, we take the views, and we take a look at, how you're leveraging all that on the product and come up with, that conversion or estimate on capacity. So how does it work? So you're used to our credit model today. And we've applied that same flexibility to this model, meaning we're still subscribing to a consumption-based unit, a model where you come up with a term like, you're licensed for subscribe for 1 or 2 years typically, and we estimate based on your use profile the amount of capacity needed to support your business case. The model fundamentally is the same from that perspective. The flexibility of our credit model is still there, meaning you only consume units as you're processing data within our system. So that flexibility, that elimination of a high watermark penalty is still in place, and still we take advantage of that. But what's different with the Flex offering is we've done 2 things. One, we've obviously introduced the new billing parameter around log search. So it's no longer on the ingest front, it's more on the search volume, and we track that on terabytes searched. And our list prices from our, call it self-service level, to our upfront, which is most customers are on a reserve capacity, and that's our upfront reference at $3, is a competitive starting point in the market compared to others that use a similar model. And for all other elements, they're still there. So we still are offering, as part of our platform approach, tracing and metrics and the other capabilities within the product. We've aligned the unit of measure or the credit closer to an MSRP of $1 equals a credit. So why have we done that? So if you're familiar with our burn table today, you see numbers like 20 credits and 14 credits per GB ingest and so forth. Those numbers have been translated, if you will, closer to 3 credits to 3.5 credits. And the reason for that is it's much more intuitive to understand the translation between that consumption of that unit of measure and the approximate price that's going into the product. So the key questions that often come up is, well, how do we track it? And again, we're leveraging what you know today within our Sumo platform. There are already out-of-the-box queries and dashboards that give you insights to search, that give you insights to the type of queries your team is running and who's running queries. We have created an out-of-box app called the Flex app that's very similar to our infrequent app today, if you're familiar with that. That gives you out-of-the-box scheduled views and dashboards that are specific to search details. So it gives you, as the practitioners and as the admins, the ability to see what type of search is running in your system, what are the most frequent type queries running, what are the largest type queries running, and gives you the tools to interact with your practitioners and your team members on what is making the most sense for the company. And if there's anything in particular that's running high or low, it gives you the ability to dive in and have the questions with your team to understand if there's any adjustments that need to be made. Our account screen is no different in terms of how you're used to it today. It's been modified to include the flex variables, but the advantages of our live account management screen are still intact. They give you a day-to-day, even as the day is progressing, concept of how much capacity you're consuming and by what parameters. So whether it's in search, storage, metrics, or tracing, you can see the flow and the pattern over time. You can live adjust that from a daily view to a weekly, monthly, if you have different RBAC type processes within your company for lookbacks. And those are all live changes in the system today and available right out of the box. In addition to those standard type views, we have introduced additional usage controls specific to our Flex model to provide you with additional capabilities to help not to guide teams, but also provide a framework for consistency with your rollout and production within your system. I'm now going to pass over to my coworker, CP, who was introduced earlier, and he's going to talk in more detail about some of those capabilities that we have currently have out in a beta framework, but that are also coming out shortly thereafter. CP?
Sure, thanks, Jeff. Like Jeff correctly pointed out, right? The fundamental basic behind the flex pricing is how what you pay. It's all consumption driven. You pay for what you're doing. And the currency in here, as you must have already realized, is scan volume, right? How much scan volume you end up doing. And that's what is eventually getting billed to you. So one of the things which we are looking to help solve for you is to have some sort of management control so that you can control your search volume so that it stays within your overall budget or consumption which you have allocated for Sumo, and you don't end up using your credits for something which you don't intend to. So in order to do that, we have been focusing on introducing more and more guardrails, especially for users within your team who might be inexperienced and now new to search scanning and not new to writing queries, right? So in order to help guard you from making sure that they don't really end up running an inadvertent cost or running high frequency queries or high usage queries, and make sure you stay within the budget, we are introducing some of the new guardrails which will allow you to protect and establish guidelines on how to use this properly and ensure that you stay within your budget. As part of that, in our next focus, from once we make a good progress on management controls. We'll start to go deeper into scan usage visibility, which Jeff just showed you a preview on. Even though you have ability to see all your costs, which users are incurring, which features are incurring that on the accounts page, you get an overall view of where credits are getting consumed. We want to do better. We want to start having more in-product guidances to help you nudge on where to make sure you can optimize your queries as well as run your budget more efficiently, as well as give you much more comprehensive experience on showing your breakdowns by cost, giving you more analytical ability, more forecasting ability, so that you are always in touch with and in control with your budget with Sumo. So if you go to the next slide. So as part of that, we have recently rolled out a beta. If you are interested in this, feel free to reach out to your account manager or reach out to Lisa. They will help you get it enabled. But the idea here is one of the first things which we are offering as part of the beta is an org-wide control for you, where you can set a query budget. What is a query budget? It's a query size limit, which will allow you to set up how much a query can scan. And this is not just restricted to queries which you're doing on the log search page, even on dashboards, monitors, schedule searches, wherever you're using scanning. This org-wide budget will ensure that they don't really go about a particular limit which you're not comfortable with from a scan volume perspective. So we give you that ability. However, if you're an advanced user, you would also have the ability to set it at a user and a role level, which is a layer below organization level. So via API, if you're a power user, you can set it up for a bunch of users and roles and ensure they don't scan beyond a limit which you're not comfortable with, and ensures that you stay within your Sumo capacity. And if you go to the next one, since we are right now live with the beta, we are soon will go towards GA for this. And as part of the GA, we'll also introduce time phase budgets. As you can see towards your right, this is the new UI, which will come in somewhere towards the end of November. And the idea behind this is, like you saw below, before we had an API version for that, all of that would now come directly into the product UI. You would be able to scope at an entire organization level, user level, role level. And we'll also introduce a new capability for you. Apart from query size limits, you would be also be able to set up budgets at a time interval level. So think of it like a daily, weekly, monthly budget, which you can assign so that your consumption doesn't cross against, again, a comfortable capacity, which you think will help you stay and manage within your budget. So these controls will allow you to use and consume all the analytics which Sumo offers in a much more efficient and optimized way, while not really making sure that you don't overstretch your budget and not really go outside the overall credits you have consumed unless you actually need it.